on Thursday, December 4th. We'll start by calling the Wilton Board of Education organizational meeting to order. As per bylaw 9120, the officer interest survey was sent on 11/7 and the results were included with board material packet emailed to members in advance of tonight's meeting. Lori, Mark, Pam, and I expressed officer interest. Board members may nominate any member to serve as an officer notwithstanding the information shared through the survey. Board members may accept or reject a nomination notwithstanding any information shared with the survey. As per bylaw 9120 and 9321, we move to the election of board officers, which are to be done in writing and recorded in the minutes. Everybody has 3 ballot sheets. Are there any nominations for the position of chair?
I nominate Ruth to continue her work as chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Lori, second. Any discussion? Move to vote by paper.
No, just, is it required if there's only one candidate?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why you started to do it even before.
It's 6 votes for Ruth to Luca for chair.
So you said 6 up.
6-0.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Are there any nominations for the position of vice chair?
I'll nominate Nicola Davies.
Second. Any discussion? Vote by.
Am I allowed to ask a question of Nicola? Or is that? I don't know the results, right?
We don't, usually the discussion is, there's discussion on the motion. The motion is Nicola, so I'm.
Oh, sorry. So that's a no?
I mean,
You're the chair, I'm just.
it's never come up before, so I mean.
I was just curious, I was just curious why you didn't express interest.
Oh, because it got
Like, or do you actually want the job?
Yes, we do want the job. It was buried in my email.
Thank you.
Six votes for Nicola Davies.
Congratulations. Are there any nominations for the position of secretary? I would like to nominate Lori.
I'd like to second.
I'll second.
I'll take Nicola as the second. Any discussion? Vote by ballot.
Christy Mackin is still gonna be her man. Oh, poor thing.
Six votes for Lori.
Thank
for secretary.
With officers being set, we'll move to the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda, which includes the appointments of Shipman and Goodman for counsel, Dr. Christine Mackin as medical advisor, designates signatories for the WPS Webster bank accounts, and appoints the firm of Caden, Escalara, and McHale as impartial hearing board. Are there any questions about the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I moved.
Thank you, Nicola. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions?
I'm I'm confused because this consent agenda just says minutes from the November 20th biz ops.
No, that's the full week, this is the organizational
there's
meeting.
two here.
There's two agendas.
Oh, sorry. Meeting.
I should point it out.
All good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry.
I did read all those things. I
Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Moving to the next item, we have to discuss and approve the 25-26 meeting calendar. Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting calendar? The calendar sets the time and the date of regular BOE meetings, which are always the first and third Mondays of each month, the budget workshops, and also the BOE-BOF joint budget meeting. Are there any questions about the calendar?
Just one question, Ruth.
Yeah.
If I recall last year, I don't know if we used the third budget workshop meeting. I don't know if anybody remembers, but those are like at our discretion to keep or cancel if we think. Is that right?
The workshops or the regular meetings?
The workshops.
The workshops we scheduled, we had like, I think, 2 cost centers or 3 cost centers per workshop. What we can do is if we find that we're racing through the first one and, we can adjust the schedule for the second one, and then you can keep it or cancel it if you want.
If I remember correctly, last year we used the 3 workshop meeting dates, but we took off further deliberations from another meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Any other questions or discussions on the calendar? Is there a motion to approve the calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Finally, there's to just review and discuss, for you all, there's a draft board committee members and liaisons list. What I would ask of all members to do is to take that home, think about your time and your availability and your interests over the coming year. And then when we come back to workshop on the 18th, if you could be prepared to, share what your assignment interests are and discuss your individual, goals and priorities as we figure out who's gonna take on what in the coming year. And if anybody has any questions about that, either now or in the coming weeks, you can feel free to email. And with that, the 25 organizational meeting is adjourned at 7:08. And at 7:09, we'll call the Thursday, December 4th, 2025 Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. I'll take Pat a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Public comments. The board has set aside time at the beginning and end of regular meetings for public comments for members of the public to share their views on matters involving the Wilton Public Schools and to help inform the board's decisions on such matters. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to any one subject. For the record, please also give your name and address. The board considers the views of citizens in its deliberations and welcomes and appreciates public comment. The board listens to public comment thoughtfully and with interest. The board, however, generally does not respond to public comment during board meetings by offering commentary or answering questions. The board also invites commentators and the public to contact the superintendent directly with any specific questions or comments. The board, through the chair and the superintendent, may respond to questions and comments offered during public comment or shared directly, and in responding may also direct members of the public to the appropriate staff member for a response. Are there any comments from the public? No comments. And there'll be an opportunity again at the close of the meeting. Consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda? It's the minutes from November 20th business operations meeting. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Nicola. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Board chairs report. I don't have anything tonight, so.
Great. Just a couple things. First, welcome. So very happy to have you at the table. We want to congratulate 68 of our newest National Honor Society inductees who were inducted 2 nights ago. Mr. Michael DeGennaro, who is a relatively new school counselor, has taken over facilitating that group. So he's been working with the officers, and they put together a terrific induction ceremony and a lovely reception that followed. And our former board member had 2 of her 2 twins who were inducted. So congratulations to them and to the others. It was a nice night. And then if you were there or following along or read in the paper, our football team won in Wilmington last night. And so they're on to the state semifinal game, which will take place here at Fujitani Field, either 6:30 or 7 on Monday. And so that should be a good game. So bring your winter coat and come on out. And then last, just on the calendar, next Wednesday, Thursday, December 10th and 11th, we'll have our Sounds of the Season concerts in the Clune. And so I was down with Malcolm and his ensemble this afternoon, just listening, and they make a joyful noise. And so it'll be worth your time to attend. So mark it in your calendars if you're available. And then just the last item for me, there was just a little chatter before the meeting started, and so you may have saw the headline of the article about last night's facilities committee here in the town, and that's been just a challenging process. There's a lot of information to digest, and trying to get that ship moving in the right direction has been daunting, to say the least. And so a lot of good people sitting around that table wanting to do good work, and not having good, clear information has just been challenging for all the time this committee has been meeting. Thought it might be helpful for this board to take some time on the 18th, and then again, we can look at some additional time when next we meet after the budget presentation in January to really do a much more in-depth examination of our facilities plans, such as they are and are developing. I think for the 18th, one of the things I want to talk with you about and get your input about is around sequencing. We had kind of a general plan in place that was emerging, really thinking about Middlebrook and then moving on to Cider Mill, and then really focusing attention at the high school, because that's where most of the work needs to be done. There are a lot of factors that weigh into that, and so I think that merits a conversation. We have Eric Kyer from KG&D doing work for us now, and so we should have it by that meeting for all of you to look at, both the educational specification documents for each of our schools, plus the bond proposal for Middlebrook School. We should have that by then as well to look at, and if we don't, we'll certainly have it for the first week in January. And then I think so having a first round conversation, then a second round conversation around strategy and what kind of additional technical help we might need to really make sure that we set these projects up appropriately and make sure that nothing gets missed in the early planning phases, I think would be fruitful. So if you're on board with that, then I'll make those arrangements.
That sounds right. So we'll add it to the 18th. Yeah.
Okay. Good, that's it for me.
Okay. So next up, under review and discuss, is the community conversation on parent engagement and budget discussion, which took place 2 weeks ago already.
It's time flies.
I know, it's almost 2026.
Yeah, so you were all there, I just thought we'd take an opportunity to have a debrief conversation. We shared with you the Google Gemini summarized notes. They were, pretty accurate to what was actually printed on paper. And so, thematically, if you have time to read through them, you'll get a general sense, from the group that was assembled in terms of budget priorities. There were a lot of common themes that were around instruction, professional learning, ensuring social services is addressed. It looked to me like a desire to continue to expand, more hands-on and kind of authentic type experiences, and then the other set of questions really hopefully challenge people to think about how we can continue to strengthen just parent engagement. And so one of the I think bolder takeaways that I saw both in the summary and in the actual documents was this interest in having more events that include kids and parents together. And so we do some of those across the year, and for fairly obvious reasons they're always well attended. And so to think about how we might be able to capitalize on those and maybe add some other things. I thought too, I found it interesting just that what people found, really valuable in the strength of the relationships, that they enjoy with teachers and other staff. And so I think, again, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but certainly a reminder of our values and, some of the work and practices that we need to continue. But you were all there, and so, would love to hear your feedback as well.
Yeah, so I'd love to even just go around the table since we were all there and share your thoughts or comments, anything from the organizational nature of the meeting to specific content in it. So
happy to start. So I think one of the paradoxes that our group ran into as we broke into groups and were answering some of the questions together was our first station was around how do we drive more engagement between families and the schools. And we were debating things, whether it was, the timing of events, does it conflict during the day with the work day or at night with post-school activity and things. And I think one of the conclusions we came to was that the folks that were able to show up from the community are the same people that are always able to show up from the community. And so we didn't have an answer, but we need to get more creative with how to draw the community out to interact with us. And one of the things we talked about as a group, just timed up because parent-teacher conferences were coming down the pipe, was it would be great to find a venue where parents are already going to be showing up because they're there for parent-teacher conferences, and those things draw people out. I think we should take advantage of those events to source feedback from the community because they're going to be there over a 4-day period, for example. So not to try to push one idea over the other, although our group did push that one forward, so I'm partial to it. But I think it was a good reflection for everybody. It was it's the same 18, 20 people that are there, and we have to figure out a different way. And so that seemed like one interesting one. And there's a lot of those examples of events where parents are coming out, football games, sporting events, and where I think we can get creative for how to solicit that type of feedback.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Mark, I know you were there for a little bit. Any thoughts or reflections? It was your first kind of entry?
I think probably the same thing, which is, I don't know. I don't know if I got it right. I just sort of did my best to count who were staff and faculty and board members versus who were not. Yeah. And the ratio, I just don't know if you got the signal you needed.
Yeah, well, we were
that would be my
clearly
my
overrepresented.
Like not that the people in this room don't have good ideas.
Yeah, I would never argue it was a representative sample from our community for sure.
So, it's like a good brainstorming session, I guess.
Right.
But,
Could we do the same thing again, but in the daytime? Because all my notes are all about the same theme. If we want to get engagement from parents, we need to find ways that suit their kind of time-crunched lifestyles. So is there anything we could do with a short digital survey or a building level listening opportunity, or just have Zoom hours and people could drop in and just listen or make a comment.
I think we can do whatever we think makes sense.
Yeah. Because I would go around the pickup line an hour before school lets out. The Driscoll and
Wreck them out of the car.
yeah, have conversations with 20 people.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things, I was with Karen and Brian and Bob, and Karen was talking about the lack of attendance to curriculum nights. And I was thinking, why don't the kids and the parents come to curriculum nights? And why don't the kids ask their parents to come to those things that are so low in attendance? And obviously it's not gonna work in North School or even Silent Mill, but at the high school, if we can add so that there's an engagement between the kid and the parent, listening to the delivery of the curriculum, and both of them looking at it and talking about it and have some dialogue. Because the parent goes, but the kid doesn't go, and it's what he's supposed to be doing. So why can't we have a joint and ask the kids to ask their parents to come, and they come as well? Because it's not like it's mysterious or something that they wouldn't. It's what they're being taught, and I just thought, why aren't we doing more of that? Because they will come if the kid is engaged. Right? They'll come if there's something that the kid is doing. They'll show up for that.
Yeah, I think the game night format that the lower schools have used, that's really
Yeah.
intended to
Yeah.
showcase curriculum has been comparatively much better attended. That's a good recommendation.
I thought a couple of the themes that came through that haven't been mentioned are great interest in wellness. And there was a couple themes of using outdoor spaces more. I'm sure you guys saw that. And also technology. I think they recognize that, with the cell phone kind of ban, but we also need other technology, and that everybody should be on the same level playing field with the technology. And of course, like Patrick said, the core values were on every single board.
Kevin, when you talk to other superintendents in the area, generally, have any of them cracked the code on this?
No.
I think that really changed definitely. I don't want to lean on that as an excuse, but I think the general sense is people are kind of more tired or more judicious with their time, and the kinds of traditional events that we've been running just don't hold the same value when you've got all kinds of other family obligations. And so there's a thirst, across the region, I think, to reimagine this type of engagement to try to make it more meaningful for the folks we intend to serve. Yeah, I will say, just generally speaking, and we know this is true here, any events that involve kids are, more often subscribed by parents, and so there's some initial thinking on, how to target message or, whatever, solicit information or what have you, in those moments when you have a more captive audience. I don't know that quite strikes the need that I'm looking for personally, but it's an opportunity too.
So, I feel like this has been something that's been at the table for as long as, the years that I've been sitting here, and it's always the, because we have had times where we've had large parent engagement. So to some extent, when something comes up that is of interest or of concern, like it's not that parents don't know how to engage, or that we don't have a feedback mechanism or procedures like that. And I think that the thing that why I like kind of the organizational structure that we had the other night, and it would be great if we could find a way to engage more people on those types of platforms, is because all the school administrators are there too. And so you have them as a captive audience all at once as well, besides just having diffuse kind of conversations where other people don't, where you it's harder, takes more work, and it's harder to kind of figure out where there's a consensus or kind of a train of thought or a common thread. So but at the same time, it is, parents, it generally tends to be, the same
Yeah.
the same people. I think that, maybe there's a way to come up with like working with the PTAs too, in terms of, if there's like kind of one big PTA meeting a year that more people come to versus others, or a way to kind of combine the questions that we have with an open house night or something along those lines. But I think it is really difficult, and I think that there has been times like if it doesn't directly kind of fit with my kid, and
Yeah.
and I'll also, I think that we should also kind of look at it also as a signal for in general that the community does support what we're doing, and overall
They're happy.
they're happy. I'm not saying that every single person is happy with every single element, but I think that there's also I do, to some extent, take comfort in that.
So I went to the accountable session, and there was not that many parents there, and I was surprised about that because that's kind of a hot topic. But that's pretty pertinent to everybody here, and I just thought that to me was a shame that she was good, and there wasn't enough people there to kind of generate a lot of energy for her. And I was worried. I thought, this is something that everybody's struggling with, everybody. And she had some pretty good ideas about how to help, and that wasn't available to enough people because they didn't come. And that's a night thing, and I don't know if that makes a difference, and if it was a day thing, more parents would come to a day thing than a night thing, or babysitters, or what. It's hard to tell, but that was I thought a real loss for this community. But she was good.
One other thing too that came through, and I don't know how we source these traditionally, but there was a consensus that they want to create more opportunities for work-like experiences, internships, and out of the classroom.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can, when this meeting gets summarized in the paper, but if we can have an ask of like for the business community. I mean, that is clearly something parents are looking for in those opportunities for their kids.
And I think that also like research opportunities or opportunities for kids to have field work or other types of moments like that definitely came through. And I think also our facilities, and whether between indoor outdoor environments, the buildings themselves play into a role in environment and wellness, and that came through a few times in terms of priorities. We'll keep cracking at it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were all there too. Is there anything?
Yeah.
Chuck, Maria?
I think it was a lot of what was shared already here. It's I think the big question is really how to engage parents in what we perceive to be these really meaningful experiences. We've had some big names here with important messages to share, and one of the things we wondered was how well we're getting the message out to parents, and it's really trying to balance the amount of communication that we're sending out in a way that gets people's attention, but so that we're not sending out so much that nothing even registers. Yeah, right. Like if everything is important, nothing is important.
Yeah.
And so, I don't have an answer to that, but I think one of the things that I heard was just that parents may not always know about the opportunities, and how do we communicate that better? How do we maybe engage kids in knowing who's coming and maybe communicating the message to families? And also, I may have shared this personally because I look at this also through the lens of a parent, as just offering parents different opportunities for engagement. Like if it's in person, can we also offer a remote opportunity? Can we also record it so that parents can, and I'm just speaking specifically to some of the speakers that we've had and the panels that we've had, so that they can access the information later. Because scheduling just seems to be a challenge for everyone.
Anything to add?
So I'm sitting here listening to you guys, and I guess I'm a little confused about what you mean by parent engagement. To me, the most important thing is the engagement between teacher and parent. And so we've talked about things like making a phone call to every parent in your classroom. It was mentioned here, always say something positive. Going back to what you were talking about, I would like to see kids lead their own conferences, right? I think that would be much more meaningful. So that's the kind of engagement. I'm not quite sure how the board can engage more. I liked your idea. Why don't you go and walk the...
That was an interesting idea.
That's an interesting
actually.
idea.
Not this week though.
Too cold.
In the springtime.
And it's warm and lovely.
But open school night might be an opportunity for all board members to go to those open school nights because the parents will be coming in, so.
And I do find that I'm at those places as, parent and sometimes as board member or as both. I think also though we have to be, when you try to co-opt the opportunities as to where parents are, like what is their mindset in those moments? And are we are we asking too much of those moments? I mean, I do think that, and to some of what Chuck said about like parent and teacher kind of engagement, really, I think communicating to parents how best or how easily to get in touch with teachers or to be involved in the classroom. I think, something as silly as I've always thought that finally the kind of like the phone book over the directory is now like front on the website now. So it's like easy to like find contact information. But it's hard to arrange a phone call or have a phone time without doing an email or some other type, making in some other type of request first. I really liked in Middlebrook how at least some of the Middlebrooks have like office hours for parents. So I think that those types of engagement opportunities are nice. And I do like the idea of bringing kids into it. Because kids like to show off too.
And also they'll have more ownership, like kids should have come to
have some
that accountable
agency.
session at night with their parent. It would have been a very interesting discussion between the kid and their parent, listening to what she talked about with the phone. And I think that would have been a fascinating thing to watch because the kids actually have the power because they know more about the mechanisms than the parent does. And so all the parents were there to try to figure it out, but the kid knows more and knows how to make it sing better, and the parent doesn't. And a lot of those parents there when I was there were telling me that their kids laugh at them, and because they don't know how to use this phone the way they can. But it would have been interesting to have that dialogue with the kids and their parents there, just about the mechanisms and what it does to them as a family.
What kind of engagement are you looking for?
So I think, initially, and, there are levels of engagement. And so I think, foremost, having parents feel legitimately connected to, I think probably their teacher first, the school, second relatedly, but feeling like they have an easy opportunity to weigh in, to participate, such as that it's meaningful, and a member of the community with voice.
And do you expect that at all equivalent in all levels or no?
I don't know that's a great question. I think aspirationally, yeah. I mean, I think if you think about, even your own experience as a dad when your kids were smaller, right? New experience, schools, new, one teacher, there's a different energy around that connection versus, say here at the high school. And, we also send conflicting messages about independence and what that means. But yeah, I think it's having the opportunity to to have our parents know our staff at this level is just as important as it is at the lower level, so sure.
I mean, one observation I guess I would have is the people who seem to show up and be the most vocal are at the elementary level. And certainly, like to your point earlier, the signal the system is sending today, like when you get to middle school, you're told,
Right.
we don't do parent-teacher conferences unless we invite you. And so I think that starts us in a very different signal to like what kind of engagement you want from the parent in the classroom and with the teacher. Like I had 2 kids go through 3 years of Middlebrook, never got invited to a conference once.
Yeah.
You know? And so
I can relate to
I guess that's a good thing because, but even that, it's like, so, and there were emails and things like that to say like, hey, just want to give you an update on your child, but it doesn't, if your goal is for the parent to have a connection with the teacher, I don't think an email is going to do it. And again, I'm not saying that should be the goal, but that if that is your goal, then I think, you would need to think about how you want to advise your staff to achieve that goal. Right now, that they don't quite seem that.
No, they're definitely not, right? We don't run conferences at the high school.
Yeah.
Right, so to your point,
So
it's fair.
I've just been thinking about it in light of, I'll segue a minute, the book that we're reading tonight, because I think that there was it made a distinction for me, kind of like the school curriculum and then the home curriculum that kind of can support what's going on in the schools. And I think that is a level of parent engagement too that might be different, lower versus Middlebrook or higher. That I feel like the relationship that I would want with my children's teachers changes in terms of having more understanding about what exactly is going on in the classroom when they're little and how they're doing versus when they're older. Am I doing the things at home that kind of support the overall educational development and goals that are going on in the classroom? And how can we be a partner in that respect? And I think that it's right that we do ask for our children to develop a level of agency and independence as they start 6th grade and go up through the high school. I think there's also ways that through parent engagement with staff to facilitate that too, and in a way that kind of furthers their, educational achievement. So that's kind of just how, especially as, mom hat, my kids are getting older. So different ways to support them.
I just think it would be helpful at some point to just have maybe a more defined objective, right? Like if it is some sense of you want the schools to be more of a center of the community, then that feels different than I want parents to have a relationship with teachers. And again, it could change through time, it could change at different ages, it could be to Ruth's point that I want the parents to engage with their child in a different way, just to be engaged in education, not necessarily with the school itself. I think just more specificity in the goal. Because right now it feels like what's happening is people are saying, I want to engage this way, I want to engage that way. And so you're getting these conflicting thoughts because each person is sort of talking about what's in front of them.
Yeah, great point.
Well, we have lots to think about. And in the meantime, so every parent or community member out there, regardless of the opportunity that, or the structured opportunity that we provide, all our email addresses are up on the website. If you do BOE at wiltonps.org, it gets all of us, including Dr. Smith, in one shot. And so you should feel that you can send us your ideas or your thoughts on anything from what we're talking at the table tonight, especially as we move into budget season and other priority areas moving forward. That goes for board members too. You can send your questions or thoughts. AI workshop, take 2.
We could have tried to cram it in at 8:45 at night that other time, but I thought maybe it would be better received if we did it this way. So thank you very much for your patience. I know everyone was anxious and excited about it.
Welcome, Bill and Ken. Thank you, and Eric for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We appreciate it. So this is the second session of the AI for Board of Ed series. Where the first one we focused on AI as a co-intelligence and kind of gave an overview of what we've done so far. We talked about the book by Ethan Malik. We didn't quite have time for an activity, but I think tonight we will, which Ken will kind of walk us through when we get there. And we had some pretty good discussion just kind of about AI in general and where we see it, moving forward here in Wilton. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on AI for student engagement. So less of a general conversation, more about a more practical application. So the focus and the agenda are as follows. Each session we'll try to focus on a particular challenge, and in this case, we're thinking about, and this kind of came up during our conversation we just wrapped up too, that students aren't sustaining an optimal level of engagement in their classes, and we'll think about how maybe AI can help increase student engagement. So the agenda will be a bit of a book talk based on the Disengaged Teen. We'll talk about how AI can boost some classroom engagement, and Ken will give us a case study on how he's used AI exactly for that end in his podcasting class. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Awesome, cool, thanks. So this is from a survey that was done by Project Tomorrow. Kevin shared this with me a while back, and I wanted to just share some of the stats from this survey, which comes from their Speak Up National Report. This is more from like the 2024-2025 school year, but I don't imagine it's changed drastically since then. And just if you have trouble seeing like I do sometimes, I'll just read through a couple things. It says at the top, they found that only 46% of grade 6 through 8 students and 52% of grade 9 through 12 students say they are interested in what they're learning at school. Honestly, as a middle school teacher, I thought 46% sounded pretty good, but obviously we want to grow that. It is alarming in another sense too, especially when we're hoping that students are much higher in that scale. Only 42% of 6th grade students and 39% of grade 9 through 12 students say their classroom environment allows them to do their best work. So that's telling in terms of maybe how the actual classes are run or structured. 54% of students in grades 6 through 12 are regularly using technology outside to kind of backfill or self-direct their learning. So I thought that was interesting, and especially where they're trying to seek out their own passions or curiosity, or maybe self-remediating teaching that's not reaching them in the classroom. So they're kind of using technology to help themselves, which is great. But maybe the fact that they have to do that, or they're reporting that they do, means that we should try to do some of that when we're actually with them and we can coach them. And then maybe not surprisingly, 40% of students are saying they're using generative AI tools to help them, and along the same lines. That's definitely where we want to step in and coach them on that. So that's kind of what we'll talk about today. So the actual book talk. Disengaged Teen, I know Ruth read it. I know some of you guys have written to me about it. We talked about it. But just the super duper, SparkNotes version of it is the book really talks about, different students and different courses in their academic careers, something that I think we can probably all kind of empathize with as well. That sometimes students are more or less engaged. And the book comes out with a bit of a continuum of engagement. So on the lower end, you might say, a student might be considered a resistor, somebody who pushes back or avoids learning. And sometimes they engage in some costly coping strategies. A passenger would be somebody who's a bit more passive, just goes along to gets along. Sometimes might say school is boring because it's too easy or too hard outside of their zone of proximal development or optimum learning, which we'll talk about in a moment. Then someone you're probably very familiar with in Wilton is the achiever, someone who tries to make top grades, but they're really only engaged for that reason. They're not necessarily loving school or excited about their learning, but they're highly capable students and they're succeeding, at least in terms of their grades and their test scores. And then the explorer, somebody that we really love to have in our classes as teachers and something we're always trying to foster amongst our students, kids who are actively engaged and learning, and they're kind of engaging in this transcendent thinking as it's described in the book. So that's the bare essentials, what you need to know. We'll talk a little bit more right now. So I posted just some descriptors that came from the book under the 4 modes of engagement, but I just want you to take a minute, just talk with somebody nearby. What mode do you think you were in high school? At least part of the time, or something that's notable, or maybe one class versus another class. When did you feel less engaged? When did you feel more engaged? If you don't want to talk about high school, pick another grade level and fine. High school, college is probably where we're most, our memories go to. But I like high school the best for this one. And then what mode do you think you're in your job? I think that's kind of interesting too, your day job. Eric just gave me a look. But what mode do you think you're in? Do you think you're more of a resistor, passenger, achiever, explorer? So just take like 1 or 2 minutes and just have a chat with somebody nearby. We talked about this. Ken and I got dinner, we talked about this already. Yeah, talk with us, Eric. Actually, you guys.
I was definitely an achiever. There were many, I think I really liked the classes where I felt like I had
That year, it was, I was definitely.
classes where I disengaged because I felt like
Yeah,
I
my
just
junior
needed
year of high school.
to be minded so better.
I didn't speak Norwegian when I was
Part of this.
I
definitely was.
So that was so that
At work, I'm much more explorer because you get to choose your content inventory. It's much less.
and then when I came back, senior year, I was definitely more immersed because it was like, oh, I understand what's going on. I'm in this now. I'm in this now, but the first 2 years were definitely.
I don't know that Explorer was
I have a hard time picturing you as a passenger.
actually, I mean, he's
Living in the passenger achiever realm as a student.
right? So, you know, the same people
I love them.
are really
And I love
So like.
I feel like that was a better response to your
Friends and I was.
I would describe it as resistor explorer. This is stupid. Here's a better
So there was definitely times a passenger, for sure.
I was always afraid to do that. I wanted to so many times.
There's definitely an achiever. I'd say passionate and achiever. I think senior year of high school is definitely more of an achiever. Yeah. I'd say I'm passionate and achiever. And I would say now I'm an explorer. Yeah, I would say I'm the
it depends on
There's so much to know. So, and I love
do what I'm
pictures. Yeah, and I like problem solving, so yes, she's kind of
Stuff that makes me happy.
I think for me, the thing I worry about.
I think that too, like, job.
But then they just didn't know what else to do.
Right.
Like this, that's part of
So that.
Yeah, exactly.
Should probably bring it back with these guys.
Always encouraged to.
I want to know more about this.
What's smart? And that's where like I think that like it's so part of it because you're just like.
Should bring it back?
And again, I think that model works for some kids, but the inflexibility of it.
That was fun. Good job, memory.
It's fun, right? Yeah. Sometimes these things haven't changed that much, you don't realize. Like, oh yeah, I still get really stymied by my math classes or tasks, yeah. All right, folks, let's come on back. So, just wrap up where you're at with the conversation. I heard some really good stuff, just in the small group that I was participating in, and we all kind of shared that it's interesting, like especially as a student, you could see like yourself on different points in the continuum, and they talk about this in the book, like depending on which class. So just personally, I know my math classes, for example, I might have been a little bit more of a passenger or a resistor, but my humanities classes, I was more of an explorer because those are the things that engaged me more on a personal level. You likely had some similar conversations. And then in the classroom, I think, teachers tend to sometimes take it a little personally, say, oh, they're not vibing with my English class, but then you see the kid in music and they're totally engaged and totally, into playing an instrument or learning the piece, and then you're thinking, oh, okay, and then, as a newer teacher, that's always a bit of a struggle, but when you've been in the game for a while, you start to recognize this. So that was kind of what we talked about a little bit. Any other highlights or things you wanted to share from your conversations?
I just think that it's interesting how, even within one subject, you can be all these different things at once.
Yeah.
And so, I think part of it is also like, are there traits or qualities like within Explorer that you can bring out in a class that maybe doesn't actually make that like Explorer spark happen for that student. So are there like organizational methods or just, structural pieces that, bring that along with it? just because of my own, and I think that also there's like, are there ways that, there's parts of being a passenger and parts of being an achiever that aren't, for me personally, I don't think are always negative.
No.
So it's like, are there ways to make those moments also more positive too? Because I think there's like healthier ways to be an achiever, and just like grades, getting a paycheck is good too. So it's like you don't always love every part of every aspect. So I think that also sometimes giving permission to kind of be a passenger, or to understand that there are moments or times or places for that.
For sure. I definitely go through all 4 modes. Actually, probably not Explorer, but the first 3 modes when it comes to cleaning up my yard for the fall. So I definitely crossed arms, pouty lips, don't want to do the leaves in September, October. And then by the time November, December rolls around, if I see one stray leaf, I get really upset because my achievement has been done. Should be no more leaves in the yard, So I can imagine other people feel that way sometimes too. So yeah, depending on the task, you can definitely shift around for sure. Any other comments or takeaways? It's kind of fun to think about that a little bit, right?
Trip down memory lanes.
As a parent, you see all these.
Especially the job one now, right?
Well, we were saying like you very much, or you would hope, in the explorer spot when you get into a job that you love, right? And like how that relates to kids and propelling what they might be interested in.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So I think as a student, you've probably done all of those at one point or another in your life. In your life as a student, you've probably been all those guys, the resistor, the passenger, all of that.
Sure.
But then the job thing is what sort of solidifies all that other stuff. And what are you in your job? And is that something that's feeding you? And are you the explorer in your job, or are you still back in the passenger part?
And I think also like there's individual subjects that kids think of it, but there's also their overall job of being a student.
Yeah.
So like how they think about their, holistically, like that experience, and not just kind of within each individual class. So, kind of trying to, make the day more than just the individual parts, right? How they overall approach like being a student or learning in general.
So if you get stuck being a resistor and you just can't get out of that, do you end up being a resistor in your job? Because you can't see yourself in any other place or any other mode?
I just think you have to be careful applying the labels in a way that makes it like categorization of a person.
Yeah.
Like I think I'll also tell you, like in my job I'm all 4.
Yeah.
And it depends on what you ask me to do. If you ask me to fill out an expense report, I'm a resistor because I hate filling out forms, right?
Yeah.
But if you ask me to like do the thing I love doing, yeah, I'll show up all day for that. And I'll work 14 hours a day because I like it. So it just, I don't know. I just feel like it's less about are you this or are you that, and it's much more have you found the fit. And that to me was the broader point, right? It's just like no matter what I ask you to do, if it's not a fit for you, you're going to resist in some way, or you're going to sort of say, fine, let me just check the box and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would add that our system and structure, we talk about this a little bit here, does it privilege one of those categories more than another because of the way we do things?
Yeah.
And so we have thinking to do about how we set up engagement opportunities.
Yeah, that's what, like, are there procedures or organizational components or other
Pedagogical practices.
right practices that kind of can lead to more of that explorer mentality, even if it's not a subject that automatically sparks.
I think that's a big question for the educational community is what do you value and what do you want your children to get out of their education? As we said, with technology and this ever-changing world, what is it just the access of content, or is it about experience and application of content and or discovering what you're passionate about, which is the vision of the learner and the idea of this capstone experience that is going to lead to something bigger? Then from the educational standpoint, I would want teachers to be explorers as well, to experiment with new literature, new science, new social events, social justice, etc. But if you're bound to this is what must be covered, or the mentality of that raises questions within what you're going to produce with your students, or get a lot of achievers, which we have, who want to do well because that's the expectation, but do they really value what they're getting? Is it just to get that transcript? And I think that's a community question. You know, what do you want your kids to get out of this public school education? And, you know, I'm a parent as well, and I have 3 kids who are very different. And, you know, I have one who's the achiever who's writing short stories and doing math homework when it's not even assigned, and the other 2 who are going to resist doing that completely. And is that okay? And, you know, where does that start for your children, and what do you want the system to push forward?
I think also the tension within like a public school system is that like you also have to like find a middle path, because you are bound by, you know, standards and requirements and objectives that, you know, are hard to quantify with just experience, or it's kind of more of an explorer project base, or bringing in other types of methods. And, you know, what moves first, you know, and how do you how do you figure out a way to, within the classroom, to be able to satisfy both, because there has to be objective measures, there has to be ways that where you also go through and you can see that, you know, you're meeting that educational achievement need also, that piece also.
And I think that's the question, what are the requirements, what are the expectations from the state and also from this Board of Education of what a child needs to be exposed to and experience? And that's a tough question.
Yeah. But it's just hard to like to move, you know,
it's a good question.
Yeah, but I feel like that's the boundary, you know, is kind of like at this table. And I think what's interesting is like from an AI perspective, are there ways that AI can perhaps, you know, change those boundaries? Is there an opportunity to use technology to, you know, get at both pieces?
That sounds like a great segue.
Yeah, you said it nicely, Ruth.
I couldn't say it better myself. I think I'm just going to go to the next slide unless anyone has anything else they want to add. Feeling pretty good? Next slide. So obviously as educators, we all want students to be in that explorer mode as, you know, students, and then later on hopefully finding jobs that are a great fit like we described, and you know, that give them actualization and fulfillment in their lives. So to kind of speak to the conversation that Ruth and Ken were just kind of bringing forward is how do we maximize student learning through engagement and by way of technology in this instance? And one, you know, one aspect of that you're probably pretty familiar with, especially if you've been in the classroom, is trying to help students reach their zone of proximal development, which is discussed in the book a lot. The short version is kind of summed up in that chart. Where do you find that sweet spot where stuff's not too hard or too easy so that you're pushing the kids, getting them out of their comfort zone? So, you know, School AI, Gemini, Notebook LM can help to do this. These are our main AI apps that we've been using. Can help provide opportunities for personalization and differentiation, overcoming language barriers, for example, or text levels, creating interactive activities and study guides, enabling some deep thinking and independent research, captivating using AI personas, helping solve real world problems, and obviously by combining all this stuff we can help ensure students are moving toward staying in this zone of proximal development. So a really good example of this is something Ken's going to give, which is a case study. He's done some really great work with AI the last couple of years since I've been working with him, and I was able to come to his classroom about a month ago, and he was working with his podcasting students, and I'll let him explain to you kind of the context and even give you a chance to try out the activity too. Sound good?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, take it away, Ken.
So I like to just set the groundwork for your understanding. I teach a heterogeneous mix of students, mostly freshmen to sophomores currently in my enrollment. And one of the challenges I have in my classroom is the independent work, and as well as the personalized direct instruction in small group settings. So my classroom is set up in groups They are not set by me. The students have designed their groups based on personal interest because they are developing a serial podcast that is based on what they care about. So like I said last time we met, I had one group doing Fairfield County restaurants and hotspots. They were looking at about Tex-Mex food this next episode, to a group of boys who were looking at Boston, Chicago, and New York as sports cities. And they set up these groups not by their friends, but we looked at what they cared about, and then they grouped together. So one of the challenges I deal with is there's 20 to 22 students in the room. I need to sit with each group, and I know this is a challenge. And as I call myself the executive producer, before they go in to record, I need to make sure they have accurate, relevant information, that they have a sequence or a storyboard put together, that it's a logical story for a conversation, and that they're comfortable enough to have a somewhat informal conversation that is somewhat scripted in reality at the same time. While this is going on, I have to meet with each group and support them. So it's similar to, I would say, maybe what goes on in the elementary classrooms, like you're workshopping and I can't be available to 22 kids at the same time, or even 5 groups of students at the same time. So I was trying to think of a solution. How can I empower the AI model, School AI, which is a guardrailed model that I programmed as the instructor to be my co-intelligence in the classroom to support the learning, because I can't be with everyone at the same time. And it was a way for the kids to have a sounding board to get some feedback rather than just go to a student who's going to say, "Oh, Ken, that was great. Melissa, yeah, I love what you do," which students are not always comfortable being critical friends like we are as adults to give that feedback. I may not have the expertise to give that feedback. So I programmed a bot called Mel, and I generated an image because I was imagining Mel in my head. And I tell the kids, Mel is not a human being, but he is my assistant executive producer. He's a grizzled radio disc jockey producer from New York City. And I know, Ruth, you probably love the Jethro Tull shirt. That was a joke for the inside adult in me. He just changed his shirt for the first time in his new picture with me, which you won't see. He's wearing a Green Day shirt right now. But Mel is grizzled, and he's a New Yorker, and he has a New York accent when you speak to him. And he allows you to soundboard your ideas for your first episode before you come to the executive producer, which is me. So I'm not sitting there with the students with these basic low-level questions. The bot was able to respond to the students with the structure I gave it to say, well, what's your opening? How does this connect to a through line that's going to connect to every other episode? So these very basic questions, which I would ask the kids anyway, the bot is doing that for me. Secondly, as I'm using School AI as a teacher, I'm able to monitor the feedback. So when I say guardrails, unlike Gemini, this program we're purchasing allows me to see consolidated data back from the student feedback and dialogue with their prompting in order to see who's doing well and who may need more support. I will tell you, it didn't matter what the student's ability level was for this activity. Because the students were personally interested in content of their own, they're applying inquiry skills, which I'm reinforcing and reteaching of how to use our databases or use the print collection. It's one of the cool things I have the opportunity to do in an elective, that I'm giving them more freedom because I don't really care what the content of the subject is they're discussing, because that's what they care about. It's more about, were you able to locate reliable sources? Did you evaluate them? How did you set up a story? And how is this episode going to connect to future 3 episodes, and why? And this bot has really sped up the time in my room where I couldn't get to all these students at once. But when they came up to me to finally meet after they reworked and came up with a new iteration of their storyboard, I was able to approve their work to get into the recording studios much faster. I could have done this as a humanities teacher with their essays, that before they come up to me to workshop their essay, the bot is programmed to give them certain feedback about maybe opening paragraphs and thesis statements. It's very similar instruction, but just a different media that I'm working with the kids to produce. Does that set some context for you? Mm-hmm. So you can program, like I said, a personality to these bots, but I always reassure the kids that it is not a human, because I want them to understand AI will always give them an answer, and that don't assume that the answer is always correct. But as a teacher, I'm testing these bots before I roll them out. It's like the old days when we used to have a VHS. You better watch that movie before you put it on for your students, so you need to know what's there. And it's the same when they record. I listen to every recording before I publish it to Spotify, because I need to know what is being put out there. Does that help you give some context? So what you're seeing up there right now is students who are in my class. That is the data that School AI pushed back to me as the instructor, so I know who is being successful, who needs support, and where they're at in the process. So I'll give you a second to read that. So as a teacher, this was data I had before I was able to conference with. So one class, they were working with Mel, they made their new edits, and then they could start coming to my table to then start getting my approval of what changes they made and why they made changes. So I'm really looking at process. Explain to me why you made this choice. What was missing? And how did you solve this problem? So it's more that application of knowledge and thinking, which we always are worried about, is the critical thinking. The students are doing the critical thinking. The AI is not taking that away from them. It's just having another version of instruction supporting them as they go through the process, and then they could talk to me as the human in the loop. And they recognize that right away. And I was curious of their reaction, and they said it was a great support structure, whether it was the kid who's going to the top-notch Ivy League school or the kid who may not or grapple with learning, and this high school experience has been painful, and they're that passenger and they're that resistor. So I think we're tapping into something that AI is not replacing me as a teacher. It's helping me help the students and get more in contact with them to support their learning, to execute the goals of what they're doing. Does that clarify?
Great, yeah. And it obviously boosts engagement too, because it is fun and it's interactive, and it also keeps people from twiddling their thumbs while they're waiting for Ken to meet with their group. They're not just doing a worksheet or doing some separate unrelated task. They're all engaged in the work at the same time at their level that they need to help them keep them in that zone of proximal development until Ken can reach them. So I always thought that was cool.
I think the other thing is the extended activities. Like I will have other activities ready to go, and that's the planning, and that's a hard part of the teacher job in this model that I'm working in. I think it's the evolution of education. It's what is extending the activity for the kids who are moving faster. So the kids who are already going into the studio, and I'm still working with other students who are still in that, struggling in that building process, they're maybe listening to a podcast example using Edpuzzle as another one of our digital tools, which monitors, and I can ask questions of listening or watching a video, as well as students are able to then start building and applying ideas through a Schoology discussion board, which is basically a blog with each other, which is what colleges are expecting now prior to coming to class, this discussion boards. So it really allows for different activities to go through, but it is the work of the teacher to prep this and think about what's the strategy in this type of learning environment.
Yeah, it's fun to watch when I was there.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is, sorry, I just want to think is I don't use this every day. I think that's a key thing. Every fad in education, we joke that you walk around the school and you roll something out that's new. Everybody's doing it the same day and the kids are like, I'm sick of this. I think the thing is, as a practitioner, you need to know when to employ it and support the process. And it's not an everyday activity. And I don't want anyone to think that this is replacing me on a daily basis. No, it's just there's a certain time and a place to employ the AI when it's necessary.
Yeah, you guys want to try it out?
Sure. So I was just curious though, do you find like as a teacher you talk about like extending the activity but also kind of deepening it too? Like pushing kids further into, because I think with this class itself, like you said, it's not about the content, it's about kind of the critical thinking behind it or how you.
That's what I value more, yeah.
And so in terms of like pushing kids to think of other ways or other places or other spaces like within their own time, within their own time.
Yeah. And I think it'd be no different than my colleague back here, Peggy, who does this with, the STEM stuff. The idea of problem solving, whether it's aeronautical solutions to problem. I mean, that's where I'm sure we get excited.
Yes.
And that's the best learning. I will tell you, yes, there's certain things you need to know. Like, they need to know how to turn on a soundboard. They need to know how to use Google Drive and executive functioning. And that's being delivered here too. But when it all comes together, this is the application, just as trying to launch a rocket or whatever thing they're doing in that class, no matter what discipline it is. So what you're gonna do is, I would like you to think about, like, if you had a podcast that you're gonna produce, what would be the theme? And it's gonna ask you, like, what's your through line? How would you relate this to future episodes? So simulate this and entertain Bill and myself that you're a student in the class working with this co-intelligence. When we work with the co-intelligence, talk to it, meaning type, or you could do voice, but I think in this room it's hard to do voice. Talk to it as if it was a person sitting across from you. And you're gonna get better responses from the AI. Now, our students always try to break it. That's part of the goal always. And I try to break it. I have something that Bill try to break it as well. Because we're learning how to prompt it and program it. And I always say to kids, this is not perfect. It is going to give you an answer. That's what generative AI does. It's programmed to predict what's coming next. And that's the thing with School AI. We're able to program it to a certain degree so we know what it's going to predict to do next. And that's the prep work that we do in the back end. And sometimes it fails. And we let the kids know, this is learning. It's prototyping. It's design.
Yeah, so maybe we'll just spend like 5 minutes, just try it out. You can role play yourself as a student podcaster. Don't feel like you actually have to know anything about podcasting or have a background in that, but just to get a feel for it. So if you want to scan the QR code, or I think I shared this file with you a while back, if you had a device and wanted to click on the link, but the fastest way is probably just hit up the QR code. Feel free to try it out. Don't feel like you have to go very far. Just kick the tires a little bit, see what it's like.
Yeah, I didn't bring a device.
So let me.
Look down with you.
Okay.
It's just a bell to bell game, Kevin, you can have them afterwards.
Listen, you try to mind off sometimes.
And one nice thing about School AI has been, I've noticed lately, it will tell you it is a robot or it is not a human being in its start. And that's been a nice addition to remind kids, there's not a person typing back to you here.
Yeah, I think that's because California made them do it.
We'll have 4 linked episodes.
Oh, goodness, sorry.
So here we go.
Oh, here.
I
think I was not on the board. So.
Just pull up a browser. Just go to student. Enter looking for a space.
I think,
I just don't have service.
Okay. But catch up eventually.
it's really hard to do.
So Mama Chuck, if you have to, I mean, just.
What would be your podcast name?
The dynamic duo.
There you go. I like that.
Self-service.
Oh, I like it. I'm gonna join your train. I'm gonna join your train. Wedding planning? I like it. I could get into that.
So the storyboard is a graphic that I allow the kids to personalize, but I show them, this is how you set up segments,
Well, we need a minute.
just like a real producer. And we have a community member who I had call in last time. I show hers. They're like, the kids are
Draft story.
like, big things, sometimes we make this stuff up. And it's like, no, people do this for a living, it's a job. And then it allows them, but it's skills.
I mean, it's a storyboard.
Essay or presentation. Are you thinking about where you're going?
Oh, that's funny. So,
Alright. Direct.
yeah, there we go.
Space Matter.
Nice try.
I'm looking forward to seeing what podcasts are being grouped for.
That's what I was thinking about it.
We haven't done it. So we have to pick one.
working on one?
Yeah, Mark, did you bring it?
I'm just gonna have Jim and I write a script.
Nice try. Yeah, that's what I got.
That's right.
We should do it on
I need
a
your draft storyboard.
Yeah. Jumping ahead, yeah.
I need a draft storyboard. I'm feeling pressured.
But Mark, one thing about the podcasts we do is they're not allowed to do scripted podcasts. So it has to be,
Oh, all right,
when I say
so-
scripted,
Oh, but he's asking me to upload my script.
but what it is it's an outline of the segment questions. So it's those open-ended questions, because
My storyboard.
you want your co-host to know the questions so they're informed, but at the same point, you want that informal conversation. That sounds like, you're just having that.
It's leading it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the idea, because a kid's gonna sit there.
Well, like a good interviewer will do that.
And they're not.
Hold on, no,
So why should we
Oh,
expect
we have another option, I just wanna see.
No.
No, it's a talent.
So how do you get to the
it's
next?
okay, I just listened to
We have
all
to
their
answer
first
something,
episodes,
right?
and
We have to answer something
getting
along
25
the
minutes on someone is tough.
But I said my teacher said I can just give you
There's flashes
title
of
of
brilliance, they just need more practice in sport, and every
We'll see if it accepts that.
If you go back to the earliest first episodes,
See, I'm already showing you
they'll
how
tell
to
you.
play.
But it's like throwing a ball against the wall, or practicing violin, you know, it's
You
gonna be
need your
sweet.
10,000 hours.
Yeah. You
What's
absolutely.
his name? Malcolm
Yeah,
Gladwell?
well, Gladwell's right on certain
Yeah.
things.
What was the next prep?
I really like this. Yes.
Wanna drop the title?
Yeah, I hear ya.
What kind of?
I can't do their hands, that's the problem.
What is your
That's
current?
where there's other factors at play.
I'd say,
I don't care.
so one of the dynamic duo
Snappy content
tenants,
checklist.
the cookie, no, what's this thing? It can be called the
All
annual
right, so
holiday
maybe we could.
breakfast.
And I don't know the answer, and that's why I like
This
that.
in there and then answer.
It's not giving this.
You know, if it's late, you've been working.
Yeah,
on
we'll
this.
wrap things up pretty
Question
soon.
No,
down.
no, this is very cool. I don't mean that we should stop,
Oh, no,
but it's
I'm
late.
just always
But
self-conscious
you've
about
been,
it.
I
you
like
know.
this.
It's hard
Right
to
in the
be
dialogue box or
creative
something
this
like
time of
that.
day.
Yes,
And
yeah, yeah.
I feel the same way.
Episode 1, the dynamic duo, holiday breakfast.
Okay,
Yeah.
see what happens.
No, but it's true. Most important to change first.
So the AI came up with the second episode.
Where's the initiative? I can't wait.
Yeah.
Like I've used it before.
What is this
My
type?
sister loved the pencil.
Across all.
Yeah, you could, like, put it, you
Spell it out
know,
one
sort of what they need.
Just ask them to talk
And the
about
teacher would have that data.
chapter 5.
Okay, that's
Just how
fine.
you program it. What is the purpose of it? What is the goal? And the nice thing is, this one gives you more data. Gemini is more
All right, the question
I've
is.
written an email, could you please give me feedback on, not what.
Or you can be much more prescriptive, but I just Ken was very prescriptive about what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just depends on what you want to do.
Nice saying.
That's what I was just trying
Yeah, I kind of set it up with, I said only rhetorical questions.
It kept sending me back to answer the questions, yeah.
Yeah, and you can make sure it's great people.
Change the target first.
And he asked, oh, yeah.
Friendship.
I said, well, it is true.
And how does
And
the
again, I don't want to.
friendship evolve?
Sentence answer.
Oh, that's especially for
Right, right.
So often,
So what should we tell them?
sometimes I've even told like, after 5 questions.
maybe this is more compelling than you thought.
And you can program it.
Yeah, you can.
It's just,
All right, this is interesting. Okay, go ahead.
So tell me what this is telling you.
So as long as it has good songs, decent bagel.
I think it's.
He's
I also
adjusting
think that like, well, it doesn't seem to understand that that's the question for our, but that.
One more minute, wrap it up. Do 1 more minute?
We should have just said the best.
Yeah, okay, that's true. That's a good point. We shouldn't have asked it as a question.
You're like, you have to take your glasses off to actually see your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm strong enough at,
So this is.
I'm like actually very good at seeing up close, so when I take my glasses off. Yeah.
Now you need.
It's definitely
I
better.
don't need both yet. I'm like, yeah, but right now, like I take them off.
We write this like
I
a
can see up
critique,
close
not a
really easily.
answer.
Eventually, I know that will go away, but right now, I'm
You
okay.
keep asking
And I
us
feel
that.
weird, like most people put their glasses on to see
Through
their
to realize. Okay, we will.
Gotcha, yeah. I never wore them because I'm afraid to.
critical thing.
Several years.
Exactly. All right, guys, let's start wrapping up.
This is very cool.
So again, the goal was just to give you a taste of it, let you try it out. I think we created at least one hit podcast called The Dynamic Duo. I'm looking forward to the first episode, which is about the holiday breakfast. Should be delicious. But anyway.
Always is.
Yep. The episode too. So anyway, so again, we just want to give you a taste for this. I'll let Ken kind of wrap up the conversation here. You can kind of share your impressions, ask any questions of him, and then we'll, kind of finish for the evening. So go ahead.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And I would say this is not a novelty. This is not something that's going to go away. I think as educators, we need to start to empower the tool and make our choices wisely when to employ it. Also, we're seeing a lot of companies popping up, and this is any trend. In the near future, Bill and our team will have to decide, does Gemini evolve educationally with Eric, that it will do a lot of these things? Or do we stay with products like School AI? We decided when we piloted it as a team, School AI was the product that our teachers really like to use. And I think that's a positive. So we did listen to our team. And it's also becoming comfortable with it. And how does it fit in your educational model? And every discipline is different. Every task is different. But the kids didn't feel like it was not helping them. They felt it was just another tool to support their development than to come see me. And I didn't need to ask those low-level questions. It was more able to move them further in the process with their learning.
And one cool thing I've seen your students do is they've critiqued the AI output. So they've talked about as a class and with Ken, what are some of the things that the AI told them that was good feedback about their podcast, and what are some things that they did disagree with and they wouldn't actually use that feedback? So that he was training the kids not to use it at face value, which is just a great AI literacy skill in general, but especially helpful for an assignment like this.
And you don't use it every day?
No. So I've used it with this. Mel has been used once. Mel will be coming back. Like I said, he changed his shirt, which is good, to a Green Day shirt because it was becoming kind of ripe.
You got a Santa hat too?
He got a holiday Santa hat, yes, as well. He's still drinking lots of black coffee to stay awake. But he will be coming out this week, and the kids know he's coming out, and he's going to be working with them. And there wasn't any pushback, which kind of I found interesting. But it wasn't, like I said, it's not every day. It's making that expert decision when to use the tool. And I think that's the key with any new technology we're using. Why are we using it? Is it appropriate to use it? And how is it improving and extending the education to go to the next level?
It would be very intriguing to use it all the time.
So that's the question with Gemini. I think that's going to be with our curriculum review with digital literacy and this idea of when do we use this at an appropriate level, because our adults are certainly using it, whether it's that product or ChatGPT or another generative AI bot. But when do our students use it? And I will tell you, my students are using it, but do they know how to prompt it correctly to get where they want to go? And I think adults are trying to figure that out as well, because that's a whole nother skill set for digital literacy. I think we as educators need to think about is, what are the questions you're asking it? What are you trying to get from the bot?
Yeah.
And where is the bot scraping the information from? Is the question I always say to my students. Are you getting a free model or are you getting a paid model? And what's the difference? And I think our digital literacy team, our LLC leaders, our technology leaders are always asking those questions and reminding our students of that. And I think that's where we're going.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, very. Any other questions, comments, takeaways?
Did your students want Mel back? Did they ask for Mel back?
They want another personality, right?
They didn't specifically ask, but it's been in my agenda, and they know he's there. And I think it's setting up a procedure within my learning environment, no different than I would go to my instructional leader, then go to my administrator with an idea of a new curriculum or a new instructional tool. I think it teaches the kids that there is a path, that you just don't jump right into a studio. I think they understand it's supporting them. I think they bought in because they saw good responses coming from it. And I was impressed that it was giving a lot of answers that I would have given when they first would sit down at a very basic level. I'm curious to see what Mel 2.0 is going to do, because Mel 2.0 is going to not just take basic information. It's going to say, okay, what did you learn from your first recording? How are you changing that as you go into your second recording? So one of my personal goals with Bill for my evaluation this year has been feedback. I tend to give a lot of feedback. Bill's been on me for that because I like to let the kids know where I think they could grow. I think the kids need to reflect on that. That's that metacognition of like, I'm just not going to make the same mistake again. How is episode 2 going to be different than episode 1? Mel is going to ask them that question to think about that. So not only is it that sounding board, but also the growth of what we struggled with to what now we need to do differently. Does that make sense?
Sounds great, yeah.
Does that help answer your question?
No, I think that it's, well, I also really like the idea that you're setting it up with the understanding that the AI isn't always right. And so how do we evaluate information? Because I think that a lot of kids think that if it comes from Google or if it's like out there, then it's correct.
Ruth, I've seen that with our freshmen. I've had a couple conversations with flight students, and it's very discouraging when they, you're dealing with a middle school mentality still as a 9th grader, but well, it's right because it's scraping it from the internet. Well, do you realize there's misinformation? No, it's got to be correct, but it's a free product. So some kids are not cognitively there, but we got to keep reminding them and modeling. And I think that's us. Like I modeled how to use these tools before I cut the kids loose on it, because they think they know how to use it, like the cell phone, no different.
Yeah.
How to use it as a productive tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think also with just having the experience within it.
Yeah.
Because I think, one of the articles that I read recently was talking about how even if you kind of teach kids like the rules or the appropriate guardrails or whatever, that it doesn't matter. They're not gonna follow them anyway. So like how is it that we embed like those deeper kind of reactions or critical reactions to things that even help them understand that there's like a better way and that they have experience with seeing how that is.
And as an educator, Ruth, I would say we can't put our heads in the sand and pretend that AI is going to go away. I think it's not the issue of being resistant. It's saying, how do I apply this? When is it appropriate? You came up with a good term the other day when we were talking about this, that I don't want to make assignments that are AI resistant. Well, you came up with a great phrase. I'm not sorry.
I think durable is the word that they're using.
Yeah. Because I think that's my worry as an educator and as a technology instructional leader, as a library media specialist. I don't want educators to think that we should be cutting this off. And I don't think that's what our from our policy on AI right now as a district. We need to give the kids the opportunities to work with it because they're doing it anyway. I see it all the time in the library.
And now we're teaching them how to use it right.
That's our job, and that's what we're trying to do and model it and apply it and use it within our instruction to maybe go beyond where we were able to go to before 3 years ago, where we were stuck on certain facts that you had to know. Maybe we had to move beyond that, and it's going to supply that.
Is this your first year teaching this podcast?
It's my third year.
So I would be curious to see if your kids are getting to a deeper or different place this year using this tool faster or in a way that, is kind of informing your curriculum as opposed to, a year or two ago. And I don't know if that's something to easily compare or look at, but just kind of how has integrating this maybe like changed the arc of their learning or their development or the outcome quality?
My observation right now is it's made them more independent, that they're not going, and it goes back to the achiever.
Yeah.
Mr. Janaj, is this what you're looking for? Is this what you're looking for? And that are a lot of our students, they always want to know they're giving the right answer. And the right answer being, am I pleasing my teacher? Because I'm the achiever.
Yep.
Does that make sense? I think this prevented a lot of that because it was acting there as something I was looking for, but also saying, think about this. It wasn't just saying, you're right.
And look at this guy, he's never pleased. You're not gonna get the Terminator to become happy or crack a smile.
So I would say they're moving faster with moving along with getting to that through that storyboard and that planning phase.
Yeah.
the resistor is the resistor, and at some point, I can't move a kid's hand. And Melissa and I were just talking about that. Like, there's some things that are out of our control. But for the kid who is engaged, my average student to my high flyer, it's supporting their learning and application. Ruth, I'm teaching kids who are in front of me. It's different every semester. So when I have a junior and senior in the class, which I may have next semester, those kids move at a totally different speed than a freshman. But Bill's been in the room. My freshmen are behaving like sophomores and juniors by this point with their maturity because they're buying in, because it's what they're interested in, but I'm giving them a structure to do it in a form of media.
No, I think that.
And I'm lucky.
But I think that distinction of like trying to get the answer and please you and then maybe stop versus working with something that then makes them think about it and then maybe has them keep going, like past that point, which is kind of what the explorer mentality is, that you don't just stop when you get to where you think you need to be, is an excellent component or a way to kind of like utilize the technology.
Do you find that the students are also, this is a leading question, but answer it honestly, do you find that the students are more open to feedback from an AI because it's not personalized? So if I have a human in front of me who's giving me feedback that may be critical but constructive, I would imagine that I'm a little bit less receptive than if it's an AI agent that I'm interacting with.
Patrick is a great question. So I would tell you it depends on the individual. Some of our high flyers have told me over the years, not in this course specifically right now, but when we're doing portfolio work in flight, so some of our high flyers will say to me, I just want to work with a human. I don't want to work with one. And I don't blame them, because when I'm doing a helpline, I'm always picking up the phone trying to get a human on the line rather than the bot, because I know I'm going to end up at the human at some point. I think this one worked because they knew they were going to meet with me at some point. And I think that's the key I discovered. That I'm not just saying do this and I'm going to look at the data after class and then we're going to move on. They know they were going to workshop with me in person at some point. And I think they'd rather be somewhat prepared to meet with me on the spot rather than just assuming we're wasting time when they come up and they're not as far along as they should be. And this is addressing problems that I could have it do before it comes to me. Yeah. So I could get deeper questioning of, wow, I really like your opening. I like your hook here, but have you thought about this? Where the bot won't always come up with that. And sometimes the bot will come up with suggestions, which are good suggestions, but they're not always great. And that's where I'll ask them, what did Mel tell you? And that's where that evaluation comes into play. So I think it depends on the time and the place, but I would not just rely on this to solve all my problems. Absolutely not. I think there has to be that human element at some point. It's a good question, Patrick.
Do you have more than you went into tonight, or is this?
This is the only example we're giving tonight, yeah.
Okay, John, I had maybe some other questions. I just don't know if you're going to go there already anyway, but I guess one question would be like, how much work is this for you to set up, and do we think our faculty broadly have the skills they need, and what are we doing to arm them with the skills they need to set these things up?
Do you want me to start off with what it takes for me?
The short answer to the second question is that we're working on it. We didn't have as much time secured originally as we had hoped this year, so we're doing a lot of piecemeal ad hoc type of work to meet with teachers where they are and help them out. So Ken does a lot of coaching. Mm-hmm. I've been putting together materials and sharing with people. In the springtime, we came around and introduced all these programs to people in faculty meetings and try to get them started. So we're hoping to continue to work on this and accelerate it throughout the year, and then get more and more people up to speed.
Mark, there are explorers on faculty. Bill and Eric could see the data usage, and they've mentioned a couple of teachers to me. There's other teachers who are dipping their toe into it. I think it's feeling comfortable what this technology is, sitting down with it. I find today, and I'll teach the class again tomorrow, the prep work was the majority of my work. I was liberated during the class to sit down and move around more with my students in small groups. The heavy lifting is up front, and I know we
understand. I'm just trying to figure out,
an hour or two.
How much time and space do we create for?
I think the more you do it, the better you get
it. With the state of the technology today, it feels like you have to be able to figure out there's a use case for it as opposed to a general thing that we want to throw open, and then envision how this fits into it and how this helps with the enrichment or this helps to scaffold folks who need that scaffolding.
I think this bot took me about a half hour to 45 minutes to get going, to give it its parameters, to make sure I know if this is executive functioning, where my files that I uploaded to it, so my graphic organizer was uploaded to the bot. My standards were uploaded to the bot. So I know where those things are.
Ron asked me multiple times to comply with the standards, and I was like, I don't have the standards.
But yeah, and that's the nice thing about this bot is you're able to, if I'm an ELA teacher, I'm able to put in Common Core standards so the bot knows what I'm looking for. If it's speaking and listening, it's gonna be in there. So this one took me about 45 minutes, but then it's the testing of the bot. So maybe it takes me another 10 to 15 to 20 minutes. And I had a bot today that worked great yesterday for me. And then for some reason, the World Wide Web was running really slow today, and Bill and I weren't getting the answers from the same bot that worked great yesterday. So because this is emerging technology, we're not fully there yet. And I don't know if it will ever be perfect. And I don't think it will.
So to go back to the second part of your question again, getting teachers to understand this, especially in math and science, where sometimes we know AI isn't always accurate as it should be, just kind of coaching them through this and getting them to understand that your mileage may vary depending on what you want it to do. And again, getting them to kind of figure out and experiment and play with it, that's kind of the ongoing process.
And then, one other thing I think you mentioned a couple of times, so obviously we're saying AI generally, but we're mostly talking about LLMs, and they don't have a concept of truth. And so you talked about it's not always reliable. Are we doing other things to arm both faculty and students with the concepts of probabilistic reasoning, sycophancy, all the other things that come along with this?
I think we're going to see more of that come up as we go through our curriculum review. Because right now, as I'm going around to the digital literacy lessons, for example, that the LLC staff is running, they're explaining these things on a kid-based level. But I think, as we develop our curriculum more, because we're trying to catch up to this, we'll have a more intricate or more in-depth ways to explain it to people. So it's not just, don't always trust the AI. It's more, here's why you can't always trust the AI, because it's probabilistic technology, et cetera, et cetera. So we get more into the weeds with that.
And then if I tie this to our reading homework, which I did, and the thing I found most interesting was the zone of proximal development and thinking about both sides of that. And it's clear to me how this would make sure that they've done their work to a sufficient level to be ready to engage. That makes sense. But how do you use something like this, or have you yet gotten to a place where you're using this to also provide enrichment for the students who are frankly bored or need more? And I think sort of related to that, have you looked into the work that Alpha schools have been doing out on the West Coast, and have we found any useful learnings there, or not, or are they sharing?
Well, I haven't been in touch with anybody from Alpha School, but I have looked into it quite a bit, and we were actually just talking about it earlier, about how their whole model is that the students are exploring their learning digitally for the 2 hours in the morning, and they have the coaches and stuff, and I'm sure you've all read pros and cons to that approach, and then you basically work through, SEL type activities and, play-based learning and all this other stuff the rest of the day. I don't see that particular model necessarily being something that we adopt, but I think we already have a lot of those practices in place where, for example, if you go into one of the elementary schools, you may have them doing station work where kids are on IXL and they're trying to get this differentiated learning in front of those kids so that they can practice their skills. And then the teacher might be, working on, rolling dice to practice, learn about probability, and then other kids will be in a reading group, and they'll do stuff like that. So we're incorporating those type of techniques into what we're doing in a way that makes sense in public school, I think. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Do we have any PD days dedicated to this?
We have a lot of PD days. Well, excuse me, that's not true. We don't have a lot of PD days. We have a lot of PD that we need to cover. And so time is our scarcest resource, so not nearly enough. We've been, particularly in the elementary schools, focused very much on reading. Math instructions consumed a lot of oxygen, and then some department-based concerns. So, there's always a tension here with, combating for time, combating initiatives, competing initiatives. Yes.
In the meetings coming up in the next year, we'll have a session on PD and PD calendar and what's in, what's out, and priorities, and see how we kind of piece together, adding new things in, and And also then several times the curriculum review has been raised tonight, so in the coming weeks, that'll start getting structured, and then there'll be a call for board volunteer or two to sit on that committee too, as we start looking at the digital literacy curriculum across the district.
And just to speak, we've been attending Ed Advance workshops on AI, and it's with schools and leaders from around the state, and it's probably been some of the best learning, hearing what other schools are doing, and I think we're right with everyone. I think we might be a little bit ahead in some ways, and Bill and I are going to these with the other tech ILs to see and learn how this technology could be leveraged.
I'm bringing other teachers to Tri-State for a study group and to CES as well to work with Fran actually on AI stuff. So we're branching out, but we're starting small.
So right now, the teachers can dip their toes in if they want to, but there's no expectations right now for the teachers.
Yeah, something that I'm working on with Chuck's office is we're putting together an AI scale of use. And it's kind of like a red, yellow, green light system where, there are certain foundational skills or assessments where students shouldn't be using AI at all. And then the yellow yield light would be, there can be some integration in AI, but it's not the main product. I would say this would probably fall under this particular assignment. And then actually Danielle is working on the Presidential AI Challenge with her coding students at the middle school. And that would be full green because you're using AI to try to solve some kind of real world problem. And then that solution gets judged by the panel in that committee, in the federal office. So I would say those would be 3 quick examples of what that might look like. And we're hoping to have that document and supporting documents ready for summer curriculum writing so that moving into next year, we'll be basically requiring everyone to start thinking about where their assignments and tasks and assessments fit on that scale, what's AI durable, what needs to have, a higher level of durability, whereas what can be more open-ended and more AI integrated. So that's definitely stuff that we're working on.
Like, to what extent are you dipping your toe into the AI universe?
I put on AI, I need 10 true and false questions on whatever it was, and I got 1 out of 10, 1 good question. So then I did, can I have 10 true and false questions on this topic? And I got 1. So I can tell you there's a app called, whatever it is, AI called Sizzle that some of my students are using, and the difference between that and just, what is the answer, is it does prompt you. Sizzle prompts you, well, what did you do so far, where did you go, and with math problems. So it prompts you to understand the math. So I was very proud of the student that told me this, because that you can't just look up the answers. So it was, and I said she's scaffolding her own work, and she finds it very helpful, although it's time consuming.
I mean, I've heard lots of stories about students also using, uploading source material and then saying, can you quiz me on this material, create flashcards for me,
right.
like things like that. I guess that to me is more like, are we also teaching, or do we think that the technology is at a point where we're ready to teach students like how to use this to enable studying, to enable like self-guided learning?
I don't want to let the cat out of the bag just yet, but I guess I can tell you guys because no one else outside of this room will know. But Ken and I are going to be presenting to the high school, hopefully within the next few months, exactly that, talking about those capabilities that Gemini and Notebook LM can do, which are already state approved for ages 13 and up to the high school staff. And then Eric's going to turn it on so that students can use those tools exactly for those reasons.
Yeah, because that's been the barrier so far, right? Is they're doing their work stuff in their school account, but they can't.
Yeah, and I mean, I even walked by a classroom today where there was a teacher talking about some scripting for a class, and she was coaching kids on how to do it with ChatGPT outside of our domain. And, again, we're not quite ready to turn it on yet, but that'd be a perfect example where that teacher could say, hey, everybody open up Gemini, okay, here's how you're going to want to prompt it to help you with your script, you know what I mean? So there is an aspect of gradual release to our AI instruction that we need to incorporate. So school AI would firmly be in that probably 5 to 8, 6 to 8 realm, where students would be interacting with a chatbot that the teacher programs, all the guardrails are in. But then by the time you get to 9th or 10th grade, we really need to think about how are we teaching kids how to prompt, how are we teaching them to create those study guides using Notebook LM, or to conduct research, evaluate sources that AI is using with them, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of in the long-range plan too. Glad you brought it up. Just don't tell anybody. Last slide. It's a bit of a wrap up. I think we've already covered a lot of this. AI is quickly making skills prized by the age of achievement. This is on page 254, 255 if you want to follow along. Processing and transmitting information quickly, synthesizing knowledge and communicating in a certain way, less unique to humans. I think we've all probably experienced this to a degree in our personal and professional lives using technology, especially AI. To be prepared not only to navigate but also to thrive in this new landscape, we need to shift our priorities to thrive in the age of agency, which I think Ken demonstrated extremely well tonight that he's doing with his students. Our kids will need to not only identify where they want to go, but be able to drive their own learning to get there. And that kind of harkens back to what Mark was just talking about, you know, with the study aids and things like that. So this comes right from this book. If we want to get kids engaged, teach them to be explorers in their personal and professional lives, in and out of school, et cetera, this is where we start the conversation. And I appreciate everybody playing along and adding to it tonight. And Ken, huge thank you for demonstrating that case study. It was awesome. No problem. Yeah.
So, I would love at the end of the semester for you to send us like a final podcast or two.
So I would be happy to send the board, they already have built websites introducing themselves, again, mostly ninth graders, so please understand, you know, what you're listening to, but it's interesting to hear them reflect on where they start and where they end up, and it's never perfect, and that's okay. And that, I think that, knowing that there's a safety net, sort of like in a STEM classroom, the experiment could fail, but what did you get out of this? And I do have students who said, I want to pursue communications careers, and are we offering, and you last time we met, you approved this level 2 course, whether it's media productions down in the studios with the cameras, with video, whether it's with audio with me, or whether it's in a public speaking class, which I know Kevin's own children have gone through. It's one of those things that our students are craving these skill sets, and sometimes through the electives, that's where they're getting these experiences to then go into those mainstream subjects, and the teacher doesn't need to worry about teaching what we're teaching, so there's not an overlap, and the kids are mastering things. So yes, Ruth, to answer your question, I'd be happy to share you with some of the ones, and it's amazing some of the stories the kids share and tell.
That would be great. Any other questions or thoughts for Bill and Ken?
Thank you so much, truly.
Thank you.
This was great, really great.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.
We love what we do.
Yes, I can tell.
Explorers.
Explorers.
And you're allowing us to explore, so that's the great thing.
Keep going.
Thanks for coming along.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Pleasure.
No, and I'm glad we didn't, try to rush it in. Yeah.
There's no way we would have got that done.
No.
Rayon, sign out.
Not even with Mel pushing us. Yeah. No action items for this evening. Comments from the public. Any online?
Oh, we lost Ruth.
Oh, thank you. Comments from the public.
There's no participants.
Fantastic. You'll see also under future business, just letting everybody know that the BOE regular meeting on Thursday, 18th will be structured as a board workshop. We'll have council here, and still a public meeting. We'll have council here, and we'll also have a facilities and capital planning update. And then everybody will have a lovely and restorative holiday break. And we will come back to the superintendent's budget presentation on January 8th. And then we will move into our 3 budget workshops, cost centers, specific the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. And it is 8:49.